How's it going, everybody? In this video I wanted to go over some test hands with the Cyber branded deck just to kind of show the capabilities and I guess flow of the deck, at least from like a 1 to 2 turn perspective. I also want to show you guys some changes that I have with the deck. Since they added the branded fusion and mirror jade, all those cards onto Master Duel, I've been having a lot more time to I guess spend practicing the deck as well as playtesting different cards. I also did open up some megatins and look what I pulled, everybody. So excited. So this actually might get added into the Cyber deck because I have the card now. I don't know if I would buy another one because it's like 40-50 bucks. However, might consider it. We also did pull a ghost bell, which is pretty exciting. Also irrelevant to the video, but I am working on a Slifer deck. Really excited for that because of the new cards that came out, or at least the trap. I think that'll be a lot of fun. I guess this is kind of like an update video, but I am also working on the Cyber Dark deck. I like the deck a lot, like I love the flow of it, but I'm just either really bad with it or I just don't think it's as good as like the normal Cyber Dragons. However, still practicing with that. That'll be a video in the near future. But for now, let's do these test hands and I'll stop rambling. So quick update, so with the deck, I did take out these 3 cards and I did replace them with super polymerization. Actually, that's a lie because one super polymerization isn't here yet, it's coming in the mail. But I did take out the Cyber Dark package here. I still have the Realm and the Chimera. We took out the Lina for another Rampage Dragon. So actually, we will have to take out one more thing from the extra deck because I'm adding Mud Dragon, that card that uses a super polymerization target, so I will have to decide what I want to take out there. So for the additions, I added, I'm going to be adding 3 super polymerization. This card just works so well with the branded engine, it's insane. Card's also just really good right now. So the 3 super polymerization will replace these 3 cards here. However, I also did add Cyber Dragon Dry, and I want to play test this a little bit more. The reason I wanted Dry is because, I don't know if this is a smart decision or not, but the extra deck is just full of fusions, and I'm concerned that if I'm too fusion reliant and an opponent plays a card like, let's say, the Dimensional Barrier, like, man, the deck all gets shut down, and I don't know if I like that reliance I have on the fusions. So if I have Dry, at least I'm not too reliant on the fusions, but again, we'll see. I'm going to playtest a little bit with that. I will have to take out one more card for another super poly, assuming I want to keep it at 40, so we'll see how that goes. Maybe we'll bump it up to 41. But regardless, I do need to take out one card from the extra deck for the Mud Dragon. So for the extra deck, I could add things like the Protoplant engine, or not engine, but like those fusion cards. Could also add Starving Venom. However, at the same time, the branded like cards just do very well with super polymerization because this needs a dark, this needs a light, and this just needs an extra deck monster. So like, we already have targets kind of pre-built into the deck. I don't know if it needs extra stuff. The Mud Dragon though does just take on a lot of extra cards, or has the ability, I guess, to interact with our opponent's board a lot in different ways that those other cards can't. Anyway, those additions, again, the only thing missing here is one super poly, so we are running, I guess, 40 card deck, but it would be 41 technically with the super poly. And in Master Duel, super poly is at 2 anyway, so I guess in a play testing sense, it's similar to Master Duel, but regardless, I do want to add 3 super poly just because it's actually insane. Also, thank you to the people that mentioned that in the deck tech. They said super poly is pretty crazy, and it actually is, so that was exciting. I'll leave that link down below if you want to see this build, but again, I did swap out some things. So for the first hand, let's assume all sunshine and rainbows. We have no negates, no nothing from our opponent. We're going second. Core is the first card, crazy. We got Cyber Dragon, we got Jizukiru, got Dark Ruler no more, and we got Dry. So this would be our 5 card hand. So assuming again we go second, we have absolutely no way of interacting with our opponent in the early game, or I guess on their tournament. So with that, we'll draw a card. So now this is our hand, and this is actually a pretty spicy hand. So with this hand, I mean, it's pretty safe to assume our opponent probably has a monster. And assuming the sunshine and rainbows, we don't need a card like Dark Ruler no more because our opponent didn't set up a board. They have no negates, they have no nothing. Why is there some stuff on my card? Jizukiru also here isn't going to be that valid because our opponent doesn't have any targets, or I guess any worthy targets per se, but we still could interact if we wanted to and use that card. Here we can automatically special summon Cyber Dragon from the hand because our opponent controls a monster and we do not. So we can get that out of the way. Now we do have our normal summon where we could go Dry and go into our Infinity play, or we go Core, kind of set up further, kind of depending on what we want to do. We do have Super Poly in our hand, and that could be pretty detrimental for our opponent because we can kind of destroy some of their monsters and summon one of our own. However, for this case, we don't actually know what they have on the board. However, the other thing to consider too is if we did have Mud Dragon, that could just be a target on itself and we don't need any monsters in the field. That's why that card is so good. And again, assuming our opponent doesn't have any hand traps or anything, I'd probably normal summon Core here just so we can at least search out a Cyber spell. Now we could go something for like Cyber Dark Realm, actually for the OTK. We could grab Emergency to kind of set up our board further. We do also have Dry in our hand, something to consider if we again wanted to go into Infinity or Nova. I wouldn't really want to go for Repair Plant here because we got the Jizakira in our hand and the Emergency is probably just a better card. I guess Overflow could be an option, but we are already going second, and I guess we kind of want to either push for the OTK or try to set up for a beefier board. Actually, I guess the Overflow would have 2 targets immediately, but almost 3 targets if we somehow get that to the grave, because then that would be considered a Cyber Dragon. For this case, I'd honestly probably just go for the Cyber Dark Realm. Again, knowing our opponent doesn't have answers to our problems, and then I'd probably just here go for the OTK. And you might notice we don't have any branded cards in our hand, and that's fine because the way that engine works in my deck specifically is it's just another way to push for an OTK. So again, getting back to the core search, we got the Realm. So let's say I did want to try and go for this OTK here. What's my backup plan if something happens and it goes wrong? I can set the Super Poly for the end of this turn. This way, if our opponent does play something next turn, that is a pretty big problem. At least I can try to stop it. This requires 1 card in our hand too to actually activate, so take that in consideration. Could be another way to get the Cyber Dark Dry into the graveyard. The Jizakira could be a good thing, but however, we can't play that during our opponent's turn. Also, the Dark Ruler No More is pretty helpful if our opponent does set up a board next turn and it does come back to us. At least we can try to negate it all and try to board wipe it then. In general, I think this hand is somewhat playable if I decide to push for an OTK here and it somehow doesn't go through. And also, I do play a little bit more risky in a sense, so I would probably push for this regardless, even if I thought my opponent might have a hand trap. So I guess just to continue the hand, we play the Realm. We'd activate Realm's effect to get the Chimera to our hand. Getting the Chimera to our hand, we're going to activate Realm's effect to normal summon the Cyber Dark Chimera. Activate Chimera's effect to pitch a card. Now I guess that's a pretty tough decision. We can't do the Super Poly. The Dark Ruler No More I think we really need. And I'm being dumb here because my only 2 possible targets are these spells. And that's a tough decision between Dark Ruler No More and Super Poly. I think I would have to go the Dark Ruler No More just because the Super Poly is also valid on my opponent's turn as well if I set it. Send that to the graveyard and then we'll get the Power Bond to our hand. We don't have to link here, but I will link these 2 off and go into Seeger just to get another Cyber Dragon onto the field, or I guess in the grave. It's just kind of hard to see. And now obviously from here we're going to activate Power Bond, and we can go into something like Rampage Dragon, Eternity, or we can also go into Cyber Twin. All are pretty valid targets because we do have 3 machines here, or actually we have 4 too. If we did have Cyber End, we could also play that too because we do have 3 Cyber Dragons. For this play specifically, it would either be probably Rampage or Twin, just because that would be insane amounts of damage, especially with Seeger onto the field. But yeah, for that hand, assuming everything's all good and dandy, that's what I would do. Now before I clean up, some people were kind of asking to go beyond the first play, so we'll actually go through a whole nother turn. So now let's say we got this board, but something tragic happens and somehow everything gets destroyed, right? Everything goes to the graveyard. From here, I guess we would go to main phase 2, and with our cards in our hand, we would want to at least set the Super Poly, so at least we can have some interaction in case our opponent does something. So let's say our opponent plays a bunch of monsters and we actually do have a Super Poly target. I can discard a card from my hand, which in this case, I'm probably going to go this is actually a tough one. I'm probably going to want to discard the Jizakira here because I can actually special off of Core. Next turn, if my opponent controls a monster, play the Dry and actually go into Infinity. Actually, we can make both arguments here. If my opponent has some really intense monster that has multiple negates and stuff, maybe I want to keep the Jizakira, special summon with the Core, a Cyber Dragon in the field, and go into Chimera Tech and kind of trade them off or fusion, contact, fuse it off. But for this scenario, I'm going to discard the Dry. Now let's say I have a Mud Dragon target. Right now, I don't actually have the card, so we'll pretend this is the Mud Dragon. It's coming in the mail real soon. And again, this card is spicy because spells, traps, and monster effects can't be activated in response. Super awesome. So let's say that happened. We got a Mud Dragon. We were able to suck up 2 of our opponent's monsters. And we got like, I think it's like 1800 beater on the board, just some blocker or whatever. Let's say our opponent goes to combat, destroys our card. That goes, I'm just gonna put that back over there, but that would go to the grave. And we have nothing on the board and they have one monster. Now going back to our turn, we draw, and we actually draw a Cyber Dragon Core, which is pretty good actually. So now we have two potential normal summons. However, one thing to consider too is we do run Naxter, and we do have two targets, actually three targets, but really two good targets. So what I would do here is I'd use Core's effect, banish it, and that was going to allow us to search for any Cyber Dragon monster from the deck and put it onto the field and special summon it. Just a reminder, if we do end up normal summoning Core, this effect will not go through. So again, we can get any Cyber Dragon monster, so I'm definitely going to go for Naxter. When a special summon, we can target a machine monster, 2100 attack or defense, and special summon it. I think in this case, we're going to go into Chimera Tech Rampage Dragon. Just as a reminder, this is going to lock us into machines. We can activate Rampage's effect to mill 2 light machine types. So I'm going to go Cyber Dragon Core and Cyber Dragon Hers. Send that to the graveyard. Hers' effect will activate and we're going to get a Cyber Dragon back to the hand. So we'll add Core. Even though we already have a Core in our hand, you can never have enough of those cards. I guess you could also maybe want to keep it in the grave to also banish it again next turn, in case the board gets wiped. Now this Chimera Tech Rampage can attack 3 times. And this Naxter isn't really doing too much. So now the decision is, do we go Core or Dry? I think here, because we can't activate Core's effect, we would go into Dry. This would make these both level 5. From here, we can go into Nova. And we are going to detach one of these cards to special summon a Cyber Dragon. Just as a reminder, this does target any Cyber Dragon. And guess what? Seeker is a Cyber Dragon while in the graveyard or on the field, so we can actually special summon that. Now we can overlay Infinity on top of Nova, and we have a pretty insane board with an Omni Negate, 3 attacks, and this thing could beef that thing up, and yeah, a lot of damage, negate, pretty good. So this kind of does show that Cyber Dragons can come back. You do really need cards like Naxter to do it. Once you get some Cyber Dragons in the graveyard, activating Naxter can allow you to grab really any target. That was a pretty long hand and discussion. Hopefully I didn't bore everybody to death. We will do 1 or 2 more hands depending on time. Let's say in this next example, our opponent has a negate as well as a monster in the extra monster zone. Just to make it more believable, we'll actually put Lina up there. Also for this hand, I want to add a Branded Fusion just so I can showcase how awesome this card is and how much more potential it adds with this deck. So with that, we got Branded Fusion, Raigeki, TTT, Overflow, and a Dark Ruler no more. With this hand, we have no way to interact with our opponent on their turn, turn 1. Again, we'll assume we're going second. One thing I want to do, because again, we always assume we're going second, is actually incorporate probably the Shadow engine into this. It doesn't require that much space in the deck, and it allows for a really good turn 1 play. So I think that's something that I will be incorporating just to give this deck a little bit more, I guess, competitiveness. Now, assuming it's our turn, we're going to end up drawing 1 card. We draw the Harpy's Feather Duster. With this kind of hand, it kind of depends what you want to start with, but we could either go Raigeki or Harpy's Feather. Either way, it's going to probably bait out at least 1 negate or they're going to lose everything. Usually activating the Harpies is going to be pretty good because if they have some sort of back row or something, if they don't have back row, obviously you're not going to activate Harpy's Feather. Let's say activate this and they decide to not respond with their negate. Cool, whatever. Let's say we destroy 1 or 2 spells in the field. Let's say we play Raigeki now, we destroy their Lina, gets out of here. Or maybe they do decide to actually negate this because they don't want to get their whole board wiped. Let's actually say that just because our hand is actually not that good, we can't do too much else. So let's say this gets the negate. From here, we can go into our Branded Fusion. And so we're going to send a Fallen of Albaz as well as a Cyber Dragon Hers to the graveyard. And that's going to allow us to summon a card like Albion. Albion needs a Fallen of Albaz and a light monster. Both effects are going to trigger at the same time, and we make this Chain Link 1, Chain Link 2. Cyber Dragon Hers' effect will resolve first. That's going to get us a Cyber Dragon to the hand. Next, Albion's effect will trigger, allowing us to special summon a Chimera Tech Rampage Dragon or a Twin. For this specific case, I want to go into Twin because I love Twin. Obviously, to fusion summon the Twin, we will have to banish the Cyber Dragon from our hand and the Hers from our graveyard prior to special summoning that. The Branded Fusion will go into the graveyard, locking us into fusion materials for the entire turn. And from here, we got a pretty spicy board. We can set Cybernetic Overflow as back row just in case, even though we don't have any targets. But it's always good to have some sort of bluff. From here, we got a 2800 attacker and a 2500 attacker. We can at least beat over the Lina. and swinging for some damage depending on what they have. These two cards probably aren't going to do us too well, but we could always gone the Dark Ruler No More before we did all this to potentially negate all of our opponent's effects. Or if we did get hand trapped or something, at least we get Triple Tactics Talent. And I guess we could just see if we were able to get 2 more cards, what we would have. We still do actually have our normal summon too, so we could have went into something like Cyber Dragon Core. And I guess further snowballing the play if we had the option to. But again, what I love most about this card is it's a 1 card. It needs nothing else. It doesn't need a discard. It doesn't need things in our graveyard. It doesn't need anything. You just need this card and you can get Albion and Twin or Albion and Chimera Tech Rampage onto the field. It's insane. Since that hand was pretty quick, we can do 1 more quick hand. And in this scenario, let's also assume again our opponent has 1 hand trap. Let's say they got like at least 1 or 2 cards as back row. I mean, typically people are going to have an Ash in their hand. I feel like every time I summon Core, I get Ashed anyway. Maybe that would be a good assumption here, but let's say they have some back row that can destroy something on the field, as well as 1 negate. Alright, so we got hers, we got Repair Plant, Harpy's Feather Duster again, Cyber Dragon, and Power Bond. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have no way to interact with our opponent. The only card really in our deck would be the Infinite Permanence. But let's draw 1 more card for a turn. I feel like I never draw a Core, and now every time we do one of these test hands, draw a Core. So this is a pretty good hand. We have a potential card that our opponent's going to want to negate if they have back row, and in this instance we are saying they do have 1 card as back row. We have a starter. We have a free special summon because our opponent has a card on the field. Again, we're assuming the Lina. We have a searcher if we get something in the graveyard. And we actually have Power Bond, which can summon us right now Chimera Tech Rampage Dragon, and if we summon Core or hers, that will get us into a Twin. So for this scenario, I'm obviously going to play the Harpy's Feather Duster before everything. That might get negated, might not. In this instance, we'll just say it does not get negated. Then next we're going to play the Cyber Dragon, and then we're immediately going to go into Mega Fleet and not give our opponent any chance to respond to anything. So we can summon Mega Fleet, this goes to the grave, and so does Lina. From here we can do actually several things. If we do summon the hers, we can link it off with Almirage, get it to the graveyard so it activates hers' effect to get us a Cyber Dragon from the deck to the hand. Or we could play Cyber Dragon Core and hopefully it doesn't get negated and get a Cyber Spell to our hand. In both of these instances we can both link them off using Almirage, so in this case we're going to normal summon Core. I'm actually going to assume this gets negated by Ash because that's typically what happens. So from here what we'll do is we'll just link it away for a card like Almirage. Now that we have a Cyber Dragon Core in the graveyard, we'll activate Repair Plant, getting us a Light Machine from our deck to our hand. In this scenario, if I was running Galaxy Soldier in this build, I would go for it because that's a free infinity play. However, we're not running Galaxy Soldier, so yeah. So our options, we can get Cyber Dragon, we can get hers, we can get another Core, we can get Jizukiru, we can get Naxter, we can get Dry, we can actually get Elton in 2. We got definitely a lot of options. I'm tempted here to go to Naxter, although we only have 1 target. It might be a little too early to bring this card in. If we do grab Naxter, we can activate Naxter's effect to special summon it to send hers to the graveyard and get us another Cyber Dragon from the deck to the hand. That is an option, and also this Cyber Dragon will get put onto the field because we activate Naxter's secondary effect. That is definitely a pretty decent play. One thing we could also do is just grab another Cyber Dragon, but that seems a lot weaker now that we can grab Naxter. We don't really need another hers, so that's kind of out. We can grab another Cyber Dragon to at least set up for the next turn if we're feeling a little weak. And if our opponent has a big monster on the board, we can go into Jizukiru and try to, deal with that threat. For this scenario, we're going to go with Naxter because we do have the hers in our hand. So Repair Plant will go to the grave. Next up, we will activate Naxter's effect, sending the hers to the graveyard. Hers' effect will trigger, we'll get the Cyber Dragon to our hand. And since Naxter was summoned, we'll use its effect to special summon a machine type monster with 2100 attack or defense. That will lock us into machines for the rest of the turn. From here, one thing to consider is we do have Power Bond and we do have a Cyber Dragon, and a Cyber Dragon. We could go into End if I was running it. I always like that option. We are not running End, however. So from here, I would probably just play this and I would send Cyber Dragon and Cyber Dragon to the graveyard and we would summon, obviously probably Chimera Tech Rampage is the better option. Just in most scenarios, especially if we're using Power Bond. But again, Twin is just such an awesome card. We'll play Twin. So here we got 5600 attack, can attack twice, 2400, 21, and we have a tribute this card and protect the monster from card effects. We do also have no cards in the hand, one thing to consider. In our graveyard, the best card we have, I guess, is the Core. If our board gets wiped and our opponent does have a monster, we can activate Core's effect. We are only running one Naxter, so we're not going to be able to use Core's effect to get another Naxter to do that and then potentially get the Twin back into the field, assuming we get board wiped. But yeah, kind of spicy board. It doesn't usually play out like this because, again, there's so many negates running around, there's so much removal and stuff like that. But I guess just kind of showcasing the deck in itself. Let's kind of play out the remainder of this turn. Let's say we attack, something happens. Let's say our opponent tries targeting this, maybe we tribute this card. Let's say our opponent still targets this thing dies, goes to the graveyard, and let's say Mega Fleet gets actually impermed or something, and then its attack goes to 0. So we got 0 attack, 2100. Now our opponent goes and it destroys this monster, things happen, somehow this Cyber Dragon lives. Actually, I guess we'll assume our entire board gets completely wiped, our life points are down a lot because we got completely wiped out. Nothing on the board, what can we do here? Well, let's draw a card, see what happens. Imperm doesn't really do anything for us. Well, let's activate it anyway. Maybe they got a monster on the field, we'll target it and at least negate their effects. So in the graveyard again, we have a Core. So we're definitely going to banish the Core and grab a Cyber Dragon from our deck and put it onto the field. I guess specifically a Cyber Dragon monster. Hers doesn't really help us out too much here. Core not either because his effect's not going to trigger. Dry is another option. Sadly, Cyber Elton I don't think is a target. And all of our Cyber Dragons are in the graveyard, so we're really only left with these 3. None of these, in my opinion, are that good of a hit. So this would be a perfect scenario where you would probably want 2 Naxters, because if we had another Naxter, we would special summon the Naxter, and then we immediately get back our Twin, which would be crazy. But in this scenario, we do not. So all these options are pretty lackluster, to be honest. So from this board state, not having the second Naxter really hurts. Is that a reason to run 2 Naxters? Not necessarily, because these scenarios they don't come up that often. Usually in this board state, you already lost because your opponent wiped your board and probably swung for damage anyway. So sadly, from that board state again, we can't do much. Kind of a long video. I've been recording for like almost an hour now, so I'll see what I can chop up into a nice little video for everybody. I will be making a Cyber branded deck tech again shortly once I kind of finish revising and tweaking all the little inefficiencies in the deck. Been grinding a lot in Master Duel, having a lot of fun with it, so I definitely want to share my thoughts with you all soon. I do really enjoy playing Cyber Dragon, so I'd love to hear your thoughts down below about the deck as well as what you thought about the hands. Sometimes I do misplay, I'm a human, I make some errors. I think in this video I did pretty well, but let me know down below if I did anything stupid. With that being said, take care. Let me know if you want to see more videos. Definitely will be coming, but I'm curious as to what specific videos you enjoy the most. Take care, everybody. Keep making Cyber Dragons great, and I'll see you later.